gonna do the intro now?
Sure. I can.
Because I can like basically talk all intro.
Sure. I know. I'm just gonna sit back and let you do your thing, man.
All right. Welcome everybody to a brand new episode of Overcast. We're still calling it that. I know I'm saying this every episode, but we're still figuring out how to call it since the new format is with specs.
I like Overcast, man.
I know it sounds good, but you know it has changed its focus, and we are talking with a lot of representatives from the class Discords, theory crafters, super experienced people, people that are actually in nitty-gritty with these specs, and it's been my personal pleasure and dream, I would say, to eventually get to this episode and talk about the Ret Paladin. And we have some. Who do we have today, Flame?
Well, today we have two of the top theory crafters and people who know their shit about Ret. And what more do you want? And we have. You can look at that side. There's Mr. Frenchie, and down below us is Mr. Bolas, who coincidentally helped us with feedback on our latest Ret guide as well. Yeah. But yeah, boys, why don't you say a couple of words about yourself, let people know who you are, and things like that.
Yeah. Let's start it off with Frenchie. Let's make it organized.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm Frenchie. I do some Ret stuff, a little bit of theory crafting. I don't know if I'm a top theory crafter. I just help a little bit on the side. Bolas does all the big numbers, big guides, but I've been playing Ret since MOP, so I've seen a few iterations. I've not been good the whole time, but yeah, that's me, I guess. A bit of Ret and a bit of theory crafting on the side.
All right. What about you, Mr. Bolas?
I've been playing Ret for a while. I only really started doing heavy theory crafting stuff recently, but I'm currently I write the Wowhead guide and work on the APL for Simcraft and some other stuff. But yeah,
basically
do a bit of theory crafting.
The folks I know Bolas from like previous things on the Ret Paladins, and both it's safe to say that both Bolas and Frenchie are part of the Hammer of Wrath Discord. My mind was Fellhammer again, man. It's ridiculous. No. So Hammer of Wrath Discord, which is the main hub. You guys should definitely check out. I know I have learned a ton from just reading stuff over there, and there's other people there as well, like Skeletor, who has helped us a lot in the past. He also has like the Ret Paladin XYZ website.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I mean, the Ret Paladin,
he does a lot of theory crafting stuff as well.
Oh yeah. I always felt like the Ret Paladin community had such passionate people taking care of it.
Yeah, that's how I felt as like a non-Paladin player going into Paladin as a class as a whole. It felt really nice. But hey guys, like all this theory crafting and online guides aside, what you really need to play Ret Paladin properly is a set of lifting tools, as you can see from Frenchie's background, because that's what I like to say that was missing from my room that I cannot play Ret properly, right?
Yeah. All Ret Paladins are jacked and really tall and good looking. It's just
it's a class of chads, let's be honest.
Tall too. Fuck me.
Oh yeah. Well, let's kick it off as we usually do with these podcasts on specs. I'm gonna start it off with Bolas this time. First question would be like, which expansion do you think had the best iteration of Ret Paladin?
It's kind of a tough question because there's going to be a lot of, it's a pretty personal bias kind of thing where a lot of people will have one expansion they thought was really good. So like a lot of people will go like, oh, Wrath, Ret was really OP in Wrath. That's my favorite expansion. I think for me personally, the one I enjoyed the most was probably Legion. It just had a lot of like cool systems and legendaries and things that interacted in a nice way that I really enjoyed. Having like a cheat death was also really cool. So for me personally, probably Legion, but that's probably not going to be necessarily a common answer for people.
It's all good, man. You can go with personal bias, or you can look at it as objectively as possible. That's pretty almost impossible to do. How about you, French?
Yeah.
I think like Bolas, I really like Legion because that's the first time I actually got kind of good at the game. So there's like a lot of memories of getting the first time you get cutting edge, you're really hyped up and all that stuff. But also I personally really enjoyed playing Crusade because that talent was just so fun. And right now it's a bit, unless you play Venthyr, it's a bit So Legion with Crusade was like, I think, my favorite time. It went really fast, you did really big damage. What's not to love?
And what about you, Marcelian? Because normally we
I
don't.
was gonna go there. Okay, I was gonna go there. Don't worry about it. I was gonna throw it back at you guys because my favorite iteration, but this is more from a PvP perspective, more rather than PvE. But I guess it can translate a bit. I really liked the Warlords of Draenor version, specifically the Empowered Seals talent. You guys remember that? Was that any good in PvE? Because I don't know.
I think it was okay to stance, I guess,
Yeah,
like
stance,
seal swap.
that's what it was, yeah.
But I don't remember it being like the thing everyone did. Maybe I don't know. Maybe Bolas remembers.
I barely remember what. Like I rated, but I have no memory of it using it. So no, not sure. Sorry.
It felt at least in terms of like mechanics wise, it felt it gave more depth to the spec at that time because WoD was a very whack-a-mole flashy, press the flashy button type gameplay as Ret Paladin, and that kind of counterbalanced it. Yeah. But you mentioned, Frenchie, that you started off in MoB, and a lot of people consider MoB to be among of the best expansions for all balancing classes and whatever. Did you was it something specifically you liked more to Ret in MoB, for example? Because you could have chosen DK or Warrior. Or I remember.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, Pally, like class fantasy is kind of cool, right? You turn into a big angel and you smack everything that's near you if they don't dash away, which is an issue sometimes.
We'll get to that.
But I think I really like that. I think we had execution sentence back then.
Yeah, we did.
The short version that would like swirl and then slam on your head. Yeah. I think.
Yeah, that was it.
But
it could also
that was pretty cool. Holy Avenger and Guardian of Ancient Kings were really cool. You just had like all the Exodia pieces coming together. You just slammed everything, wings, and you just... That was just really cool to me, to just press every button and go really, really hard. Even if after you hit like a noodle. But I think
that's the Ret lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. And now like that's how we work now, right? And it's how we've been for a long time. And I wouldn't change it because that's what I fell in love with, I guess, at the start. So... yeah, I think it was all the cooldown stacking that really got me.
Cool. What about you, Bolas? Do you think you did say that you found the Legion Ret Paladin iteration to be like the best? We have to take into account that the game also has changed a lot. Like comparing MoB to Legion, there's different, I would say, priorities in PvE content. But in terms of like and Frenchie mentioned execution sentence and Guardian of Ancient Kings. How do you feel about the old Guardian of Ancient Kings stacking up? I think it was stacking up stacks of strength, if I remember correctly. And once you got to the maximum of it, you would pop your shit. Do you think that gave a bit more in-depth things for Ret Paladin? We also had Inquisition then baseline, if I remember.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
I don't even remember using that specifically. I think I took a break most of MoB, so I may just not have used it ever. I genuinely don't remember the talent, sorry.
But I think like the Guardian of Ancient Kings was also in Cataclysm. And I remember there was also Zealotry, which was Holy Avenger. Wasn't Zealotry the talent that you hit one ability generated?
It was more like a holy power dump, right? Like you had to maintain the buff. Kind of thing.
Something like that. I don't know, guys. I miss the Guardian of Ancient Kings ability. It felt super good to just have something really, I don't know, impactful to track, as opposed to Inquisition, which is okay. It was okay, but it was boring. Guardian of Ancient Kings had an animation, had a big stat to give you. I just feel like something to track was pretty cool for Ret Paladin at the time. What was like the best thing you guys would feel Ret Paladin had in Legion? What was the thing that made it so good? Or the things? What do you guys look at it now?
I don't know. I feel like Auto Bubble was kind of nice. If you did a mistake, you just instantly, like passive bubble, right? That you wouldn't die. Like that was really, it was idiot proof for sure.
Yeah.
But that was quite nice to have a cheat death, and like it came with a shorter bubble cooldown, which was always nice. Because sometimes you need to soak more or make more mistakes, and it was off GCD, I guess, because it was just a cheat death, which having bubble on GCD is still feels rough to me.
Oh yeah.
So I guess
think the things that I like remember as being really fun to play with was Crusade was a lot better than it is now. Like it stacked up a lot higher, and like the amount that each stack gave you was more. So it was like, it felt like a much bigger cooldown than Wings. Whereas now they sort of feel like, oh, it might be slightly better, but like it doesn't feel like a huge upgrade to your Wings like it did back in Legion. And there was a lot of legendaries that were really fun to play around. Like the cloak buff, we'd have to sort of do this mini game of like, spender, builder, spender to like try and maintain your buff as long as possible. Legendaries like Liadrin's, the ring that gave you like holy power every 4 seconds, or used to be 2.5. Like it just give you like a cool thing you have to play around that you could check. Oh, I'm going to get holy power and I'm going to get it here, so I can use abilities to make sure I don't overcap it. Even like using the combinations of legendaries with the one that gave you Divine Purpose and Crusade at the same time. Oh, yeah. That was a super fun legendary, the Soul of the High Lord. Like there's just a bunch of really cool legendaries that gave you effects that were fun to play with and fun to play around. And you felt like you were rewarded for playing well with them.
I think also for me, I really liked that we got Blade of Justice and Wake of Ashes as like holy power generators that aren't just one. Because when we just hit in WoD, when you just did like Judgment, Crusader Strike, Exorcism, Hammer of Wrath occasionally, it was all one holy power. So you couldn't really, I mean, sure, you had to plan it because you still wanted to get the right abilities on cooldown. But having 2 and 5 kind of give you a little more setup with like how you plan your stuff. Like if you're on 4 holy power, you're not going to press Blade of Justice, you have to spend beforehand. That kind of added a bit more complexity, I guess, or planning to rotation, which I thought was a nice upgrade from just one button mashing.
Yeah, it also added, like, I feel a bit more smoothness to the playstyle, having abilities that would generate, 2 and 5 holy power. Because for the longest time, I felt like when I'm playing Ret Paladin, it felt a slower class due to the 1 holy power generating abilities. While this actually gives you more space to, like, plan around and have a bigger dump to move around. I kind of enjoyed the philosophy and, just make sure you have, as many holy powers as you can, and then start dumping, rather than, oh my god, I need to build and build and build and build and build. So it's pretty cool. I'm guessing you guys are okay with the change that they did. You said you started from MOP, Frenchie. You guys remember, or Bolas more specifically, that holy power wasn't a thing before Cataclysm, I think. How did
in Ret.
Yeah, how did you feel about that? Like, do you look at it like from now? Do you think this was a good thing to have a
combo points
resource? Yeah, another resource.
Yeah, I mean, like in Wrath, there was not really much depth to your rotation. It was just all, the first come, first serve kind of thing. You just hit whatever button had the highest priority on cooldown, and that's all you did. Whereas with holy power, there's a bit more nuance to it. Like, sure, it's not that hard to just spend holy power, and you can spend holy power and not, waste your holy power, but it's a little bit more depth than what it used to be. I think it's definitely a net benefit for the spec to have that system.
Definitely. I feel like in terms of like the whole range of class philosophy in WoW, it's more or less they kind of went to a lot of classes with, this build resource, spend it on something, something, which is a bit different than managing mana to use on something. And I feel like for a melee spec like Holy Paladin, do you remember the days when we didn't have a kick?
What was that?
Ret Paladins did not have a kick, I think, until Wrath, or even in Wrath we didn't have it. Rebuke wasn't a thing for Ret Paladins. Well, again, I've played Ret Paladins since BC, and I played like 90% of it PvP, and the things that are important, like kicks,
Yeah, I can imagine.
Having kicks would be rough.
Or having your wings dispelled. That was nice.
I think that's more horrible. I mean, you already lose the bubble with like Shattering Throw now, and okay.
Well, that's okay. But
you had your major expansions break of losing your bubble, and now you're losing it again.
If you would face off a mage, a shaman, or a priest, you just might as well leave the game. There's no point. But that offering it a bit.
I mean, yeah, having no kick would be horrible, but Holy Pallies are complaining now that they're the melee healer and they don't have their kick back either. So no one can ever be happy, huh?
I guess so. It's man. We talked about this thing with homogenization in the Feral episode, and this basically is a symptom, right? Because now you see, as you said, Holy Paladins, not having a kick, but they're a melee healer, so it would make sense, right, for them to have their rebuke over there. But what are you doing? You're going again to that same place where you homogenize. Man, this word is so hard. Homogenization.
Homogenization.
No, I'm just gonna let you roll with it.
Homogenize.
Yeah, I think that's the issue when you have so many specs, and I think this is maybe why they're not too eager of adding a new class or like another fourth spec to everybody, because it's so hard to balance everything. I mean, I think we kind of have our toes dipped a little bit into all of the specs, at least at an average level, and as long as like the average player goes, all specs are pretty much balanced. They're like, you can do pretty much anything with every spec clearly, but once you get to like the high end, okay, you can see like issues okay, Red doesn't have as much mobility. If you want to have more mobility, you kind of lose a little bit of defensives, and that's a little bit weird.
That's an interesting word you said there. Mobility.
Mobility. Oh no! I've touched it. Not the wheelchair. Not the wheelchair.
Okay. What do you guys think about this? I would say this direction they had for like plate wearing melees or whatever. Where do you think they should like cut back on this mobility issues? Because I've seen it happen on my Ret Paladin. In multiple raids. I would think of maybe Nyalota would be an example. Definitely Nashitar. What was the raid in Nashitar? Eternal Palace. Felt it on some fights. So my question to you guys is, do they need to actually address the mobility issue? Do you think pony is enough? Should there be any burst of speed like we had in WoD? Having a small speed on your judgment or something like that. Where do you guys sit on the whole mobility thing with Ret Paladins?
I'm not sure, because when you have like a big mechanic to do or like run away from, pony is great because it's really fast for its duration, right? So you can really get out of trouble really fast. Like if you had to, I don't know, if for some reason you had to do a seed on Artificer and you couldn't use your bubble, you can really sprint to it. Like if it's one of the close ones, you can sprint to it and get back to the portal easily, right? It becomes an issue when you have to do like a dance mechanic, like on Stone Age in general or Council, where there's like sustained movement for like 10 seconds straight.
Yep. And
you have to like move around something or zigzag in somewhere. Then the horse is like, you go really fast and then you have nothing. And you just either you like sprinted past everyone and then they have to avoid your like trail, or you like stutter step while on the horse, and then even then that doesn't feel very good. So I think mobility has there's different types of mobility where you can like do a mechanic really quickly or do a dance properly. And having the burst of speed from Judgment, the long arm of the law we had in WoD, which is like the little bit movement, was really good for the dancing stuff. And because it was on the mobility row where you had your speed of light as well, you could pick for like depending what you needed in the fight. And I think having the option would be probably the best way to fix it. That said, I know you said you do a lot of PvP and stuff. When I did PvP on my DK this season, it felt really, really good to not be able to be slowed below 70% with Death's Advance. Yeah. And I feel like Ret could use something like that, where obviously like, as Ret, especially right now, if you touch someone, they're just gone, right? Their character gets deleted. But if you don't, you're just completely useless. So having that like base threshold that you can't be slowed beyond would be maybe a good way to fix it without making Ret just unstoppable. So I think it's like nuanced, obviously, because there's like so many scenarios. But yeah, I think having the mobility talent row would be nice. And having maybe a threshold of move speed would also be nice. Beyond that, I'm not too sure what they could really do.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Bolas? Do you have any ideas on this? Are you fine with it? Do you think they should be looked at?
I think as far as like the steed being kind of short and not very good for sort of sustained movement, Light Sparting, which is the conduit that increases like the duration, it almost doubles it now if you have it at max rank. That goes a long way to helping that kind of situation where if you need to move for like 5 or 6 seconds, now you can do it rather than just 3. It helps a bit. It's not quite, a full sprint, but it's pretty good. From like a PvE perspective, I think they've done a pretty good job recently for quite a few fights to not require a lot of movement from the melee, like especially this raid, Castle Natria. There's not really that many bosses where you have to move a lot as a melee. Like you might have to move, to a pillar for Sludge Fist or like out and back again, but it's not a large amount of movement. You don't need a lot of mobility for that. Whereas there's been fights in the past where you kind of need a lot of mobility and very frequently, and Red has struggled a lot more on those. So I think the fight design recently has kind of made it less of an issue. But that said, it would be nice to have some more mobility. I would really like to have the WAD talent row like Frenchie was talking about with the speed of light and long arm of the law. Having this stuff back again would be really nice. And it does feel like even compared to the other slow melee, Ret is like considerably slower and has less tools to deal with stuff. Even with like Blessing of Freedom, I don't know if they think of that as like mobility. And in PvP it probably is, but in PvE it's not really. There's very few situations it's actually good.
And with the conduit, you get 8% move speed, I think, when you trade on yourself. You just go to the moon on that.
That doesn't get you there to the finish line. This is actually funny because Marcel and I kind of had a little bit of a debate about what is slower, the DK or the Paladin. And I used to play a lot of DK back in BFA. And I was like, nah, man, I kind of want to have the little sprint move thing because rarely you would talent into Wraith outside of very specific situations. But after playing Red a lot more this patch, I feel like if they want to design like really hard-hitting, tough class that once it gets there and connects, then you cannot really go overboard with mobility. And I think what they did with DK, they kind of nailed it a little bit better than they did with Red. And I think it comes down to a lot of what Frenchie said. Death's Advance is maybe one of the biggest things because not having to feel like you have to. Death's Advance is what? Kind of like a weaker but permanent freedom that you have. Because you don't get out.
But it works on knockbacks and it works on like force effects. Like on Stone Age Generals or Artificer or like Natrius in Phase 3. It works on all those things. Like DKs can just stand still and keep DPS.
Literally can't die.
Freedom does nothing. Yeah. It's such a huge advantage that DKs have over the melee.
But I agree. I'm not saying I'm not agreeing, but I think maybe they can do something with Crusader Aura right now. Maybe it can be something like that.
Man, fuck the auras. I don't know. I don't know why they brought those back. It's like, I mean, okay, it's flavorish, sure, it's reminiscent of Warcraft 3, Uthers, auras and whatever. And I get that.
Play Paladin in Classic.
But they're so, I mean, why? Do you guys want to talk about the Retribution Aura for a second?
We could talk about Retribution Aura.
Why? That's one of those stupidest things I've seen.
I remember talking to Skeletor like back in the alpha and shit, and he was like, why would they bring this? Why would they would take the passive of Ret Paladin like?
I thought it was a cool passive. It was a nice passive.
That's nothing, man. I mean,
but it was a passive. You don't choose to get it or not get it.
You take the philosophy of the Ret Paladin, which is like, the class fantasy, helping the others, making sure you throw off heals, sacrifices, whatever. But then, if someone dies, you really get that damage going. How does that even fucking work? And it's so bad.
Yeah.
It's a bit weird for sure. I mean, to me, right, a retribution doesn't mean helping people. It means avenging people. So the Ret Aura.
So you like it?
Perfect.
That's kind of big damn when you're pugging and someone is just in trouble. You just don't heal them and then you do big damn. Like that's kind of good. I think that an aura slot for it is kind of weird because you just never play it. If you're pugging, if you're doing M+, and you're the only pally, you're just in Deva Aura, so you don't get to use your spec stuff or your cool class stuff, because every spec has Ret Aura in the end. It's just kind of, I don't know. I think the passive buff we had before was not only stronger, and it was just stronger and more not interesting, but it was stronger. It did more for you, like as a player, right? 12 seconds of wings is just.
Yeah, and it was never a choice.
It's kind of relevant.
A choice now.
Yeah.
It's weird.
I think my biggest issue with the auras, like how they are at the moment, is it doesn't feel like something that they've given to us, that like, oh, we've now got auras that we can use all these cool things. Like we used to just have Crusader aura and Retribution aura as passives, like just permanently all the time. We didn't have to pick between them. We didn't have to pick, sometimes you can't use them because we got Devotion aura. So it feels more like this thing of, now these abilities that I'm used to having, now I have to choose between them. This is kind of a bad feeling. It's not a fun experience to play with. Yeah. But that said, like with Retribution aura, it's people generally really don't like it. They don't like that it sort of becomes the meta to try and cheese passes by having people die, like, at good times to get wings procs for your 1 minute cooldowns or whatever. But I'm coming more around to the idea that it's actually probably a net benefit for the spec to have, just from a progression viewpoint, because it's like a unique thing for Ret, right? Like no other spec has this thing where when other people die, that's good for you. Like if you're in a progression fight and you're getting to the last, 10%, 5% of a boss and a couple people are dying, you can really carry your guild. You can do like way more damage than you would normally be able to, and like get that last couple % to kill that boss. That's kind of like a cool thing that Ret can do. It's not great class fantasy, but like it's a thing that's unique to Ret that I think is probably more beneficial than it does harm it at this point. Although, if they also removed it, I wouldn't really complain.
I mean, that's how I feel about Retor, yeah, because it's like, it's just, we had it before in the Retribution thing, like you said, so making it an aura is just kind of bland. Now, if we got Aura Mastery as well, and we could Diva Aura into Aura Mastery for the raid cooldown, now that would be very juicy.
And we used to have Aura Mastery.
Yeah, but until we have that, then it's kind of just like, as you said, they took two things away from us, and then we can only pick one, and sometimes neither if we have to play Devo. So it's just kind of...
I mean, they're talking about making more utility class-wide instead of spec-wide, or Mastery would be a reasonable one. There's tons of other classes that have raid cooldowns, like healing cooldowns, and Ret makes a lot more sense than Warrior or Demon Hunter.
When they talked about pruning for Ret, I was expecting things like Aura Mastery, or even the old Retribution Aura. I don't know if you guys remember that would increase. I think it was a portion of holy damage.
It was like a Thorns or something? It would like deal damage when you got attacked.
Yeah, exactly. It was some sort of Thorns thingy. Flavorish, okay, but some Ret having Aura Mastery, I remember it also helped healers becoming immune to interrupts. I don't know which iteration was this, but probably MOP, I believe. You would help.
It's still a thing with Concentration Aura. That's still what Aura Mastery does with it.
Yeah, okay, but that like...
That's just Holy Paladin only.
Yeah, that's all Holy Paladin. So like I remember when you popped Aura Mastery for your healers in range, they would become immune to interrupts for
that would be good on quaking and stuff like that.
6 seconds. So yeah, it's useful, and that would be like something. Oh, Ret has this. Okay, every healer and caster will love a Ret Paladin in their group, right? It's let me ask you guys, at this point in the game, why would people bring a Ret Paladin into their group, Mythic Plus or Raid?
Well, if they don't have Holy Paladins, then you want Devo and Buff, so...
They don't have Holy Paladins.
Yeah,
good one.
It does very good burst damage. It does very good AoE. So there's definitely, and like Sludge Fist, for example, it's one of the best melee you can bring on that fight. There's definitely points, at least in raids, where Ret can really shine, and can do stuff that other specs don't do as well or can't bring.
Yeah, I think in M+, it's hard to justify because it just does damage and has an immune, which is always... That's just how it's been for a long time. I think in Raid, it's quite a lot better, yeah. Like, obviously, you're probably going to have a Holy Pally, so the buff is kind of... already... The buff slot is, already filled. But if you already have, 1 or 2 DKs, Ret is, fine for melee. Like, if you have all your buffs, you just slap a Ret in there, it's fine. There's no... There's no downside to having a Ret compared to having, I don't know, another DK. Okay, you have 1 more AMZ, but if you already have 2, a Ret will be fine. It has burst, it has an immune. It's all useful progress tools anyways, right? So
true.
I think it's still solid to bring. Most guilds have a Ret, right? Limit and Echo didn't play their Rets because DK was just unbelievably strong. But if DK got a bit nerfed and Ret got a bit buffed, you probably see it again. So it's really not that far behind, I think.
True.
Yeah, I think it's mostly to do with, well, it depends on how hardcore the progression is, because I think
Yeah, of course.
Max from Limit made that melee video where he talked about the buff spots, and we've had this conversation with the feral boys and gals as well, because buffs seem to put specs out of a raid spot more than what they announced initially. And I was like, oh, we can give you a buff, so that means people will want you. But at the end of the day, there's not a lot of melees you normally would want, and probably this kind of ties into what you guys talked about earlier. Maybe if they made something specific just for red, maybe red aura can give you 1% holy damage to your entire raid or something like that. I don't know.
What was it? There was was it a talent or a glyph? I don't remember. The Burden of Guilt, where Judgment would apply a debuff on the target would take increased physical damage. I don't remember exactly. There was something like this. I think again, either in WOD or in MOB. Like you would the target you would judge would have a slight increase on physical damage taken.
Am I wrong in saying that the red had the shadow resistance aura, where you gave people like shadow resistance?
Yeah, it had shadow resistance and frost resistance and fire resistance. I don't remember when they went away though.
Yeah, now I always thought, I was like, okay, maybe that can be something good to have. Maybe only red can bring like elemental resistance or certain elemental resistance to the raid. Maybe that can give them a race. But if they want to keep this buff thing going,
I think even just like a specific one, a specific school like resistance would be cool, but it would be very niche. I think like on some fights like there's a lot of fire damage, so you would take it, or I don't think that's really.
And there's a lot of fights that have primarily one type of damage. Like on Denaturus, it's all just like shadow damage, right? Like it's pretty much nothing is anything else. Like it'd do okay in a lot of fights, I think.
I think the best thing we could get would be the removal of class buffs and class debuffs.
Yeah, that's
because that is it's so obnoxious in my head. Like to have priest, mage, warrior mandatory. And then you also have DH and Monk. Like those 5, you can't really get rid of them because they just give so much.
There's even more. There's like you're never going to do a raid without like a Warlock, for example. Like there's just a bunch of classes that you just like realistically are never going to do a fight with that. At this point, probably DK as well.
Yeah, I mean the utility from Warlock and DK I can live with because some other classes have some stuff, right? DK obviously AMZ is a bit strong.
Yeah, not having not for long.
Maybe, I mean,
we'll see.
Even nerfing it to like 3 minutes, instead of 2 minutes would already be like a massive, not massive, but it would be a good shuffling of melee like spots probably, because you wouldn't probably play 3 for AMZ.
No, you just play more, so you get more AMZs.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's sensible. But yeah, like it would. I think the class buffs need to go, but like either you just give some more to other people, like Red could do with the magic debuff as well, just like DH. Like why not?
Yeah.
Right? Something
I
like
think
that.
Spreading out the debuffs or the end buffs would definitely be, a solution they could do.
Because then you'd have more of the buffs in your like M+ group even, because it's only 5 spots, right? But so right now, if you look at like how Konko meta is or whatever, you have DH tank and like mage for sure in your group, so you have two buffs out of 5. You can't really feasibly put all 5 in there, but like it would make like off meta stuff like prod pally, which is a bit weird sometimes. You'd have the magic debuff as well there. If you had a red, you'd have magic debuff. It's kind of stuff like that, which will make it a bit more interesting and make the comps, at least for raiding, a lot more free. And in M+, you'd have a lot more access to buffs without having to really specifically target them.
Yeah.
The whole idea, I think, of class-specific buffs that as a group kind of hits a wall when you think of the whole picture of it being, okay, there's 36 specs in the game. Do we have content for where we can have more than 36 players in a group? Well, no. Then mathematically, that will always guarantee that some people will be left out. So you can never have content where you need 6 tanks, or we're gonna pick 1 of each. So automatically that leaves people out, and eventually that will hit red. So either just, I think the natural progression of this is either a homogenization of buffs where, okay, there's 2 melees that bring magic debuffs, 2 melees that bring physical debuff and so on, or then nobody brings anything. And then it's just about damage shooting and performance, I guess, or utility. But, I mean, I don't know if this is where the design is going to be taken, but it's definitely not what a lot of people like, the way that it is now.
Yeah, just do something with it. Just not this.
Not like this. Not like this.
Okay, let's talk a bit about talents. I have one for you. Justicar's Vengeance. Who knows what that is?
Who knows?
Oh, right,
I've
I
never
heard
heard of that
about
one.
this. I think I accidentally read it when I was trying to select something next to it.
Like, so I think we can all agree that talent has been dead like almost since its inception. I think it was used in PvP at some point, but not that much even there. So why do you guys think they kept this talent there? I'm sure they saw percentages. I mean, people
I think they forgot it's there.
what
that's more likely.
I think they just think that some people like using it and they wanted a talent there and they couldn't think of anything better. It's kind of like a weird thing because that row and then the row that has Cavalier and Unbreakable Spirit on it are really similar rows. They have a lot of talents that do really similar things. And it almost feels like they kind of just like don't have enough ideas to flesh out 2 full talent rows that do exactly the same thing. So they just sort of left Justicar's Vengeance on there because they can't, figure out something better to chuck there.
But
yeah, it's weird to me. It seems they just added it and kept it. I mean, they added it because they thought it was cool. Fair enough, right?
Yeah.
It's 5 holy powers, does big damage, has this little thing that does more damage when you're stunned, it heals you. Woo. But then they just instantly kneecap it after the first patch of Legion, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
And now they keep it. So I assume the only reason it's there is for people who solo and do like open world content and like maybe would struggle without it because it's like, it gives you both damage and healing. But at the same time, it's like, the other 2 talents on that row are really good healing, so you could just use those. Yeah. It's just kind of there.
Yeah.
And then even the fact that it does a lot more damage when the target's stunned, it doesn't work. Not that it doesn't work, but I think they even nerfed it like sneakily in the alpha or the beta for Shadowlands, because on Sludge Fist it's not even worth running, and he not only gets stunned but takes like double the damage while stunned. So it should theoretically be a lot better than using a 10+ verdict, but TV just does so much damage, Justicar's just does so little that even if the modifiers, it's completely useless, at least in raiding content.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't get it.
In terms of like, maybe they just don't have a better idea to make a replacement for that bullshit. How about, looking a bit in the past, I cannot not forget Cataclysm's Sacred Shield. That's a perfectly viable idea for a healing, quote-unquote healing talent row. I don't know if Bolas remembers it, but there used to be a talent.
It's like an absorb, right?
Yeah. It wasn't the holy tree. You could spec into it, I think, for a couple of points, and you could cast that on yourself or on other people. And that used to interact with Word of Glory. If you had a sacred shield placed on somebody and then you would Word of Glory them, the healing would it would have an increased healing for Word of Glory for that sacred shielded person. The shield wouldn't absorb too much. You would absorb like, I don't know, 10 to 15% damage intake or whatever. It would pop off immediately. But it had a great mechanic with, your other quote-unquote versatile playstyle, like healing others or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you don't have to like reinvent the wheel. Shit like that used to work, right? So
yeah,
Justicar's Vengeance. I mean, they wanted to hit 3 birds with 1 stone. Heal, damage, but condition has to be stay if it's stunned and it really pops off.
It's like 3 birds with 1 walnut or something.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't do much. I don't know, for the talents, I feel like they could do something with those 2 rows, as you said, Bolas, because they both do like healing and like defensive-y stuff, and then obviously
and then Cavalier is just like
from ability, it's just a little bonus. Like they could feasibly, like, out of those 6 talents, right? They could feasibly put like Justicar's Vengeance and Cavalier like away, right? Just bin it completely. We can make Cavalier baseline. That's also a thing, and then just decide or like mix 2 of them together, and then suddenly you have 1 talent tree for defensive, and then you just add my favorite talent, the WOD talent row with the mobility one, and then you're good. Like, there's not much. I mean, if I can do it, right, and I'm not particularly experienced in class design, like, I feel like you could do that.
Yeah.
It's simple, right? It's a simple thing to do, and it gives us 2 clear talent rows, which are, one is defensive, one is mobility. They both give us some cool stuff, because at least a couple of those things would be like new abilities to use if you feel like, you can pull it off, or like if it's situationally extremely good. So it seems like a win-win situation. You get rid of the bad talents, you get 2 good rows. I don't see the downside with that.
Yeah, I'm generally pretty happy with how like the balance of all the damage rows, the CC row as well is really good. Like those are all good. It's just the healing, like the weird healing rows that are just like just could use some improvement. Like they just feel very bloated, and half the abilities aren't ever really used.
Yeah,
I think they worked on Final Reckoning and Executions, and they said that was done because it just some things are just that they don't make any sense. So the only logical conclusion is they didn't really have time to look at everything, because it feels similar to Frost Decay, where Frost Decay has been having the same talent tree for like 3 to 4 years now, maybe with maybe one change, and it doesn't make any sense. Why would you keep the same things that never worked before? People never take it. So it's mostly about okay, we just didn't have the time. And speaking of talents, and also Cavalier and as well, and I just wanted to ask you guys what you think about maybe in designing the talents, maybe replacing some of the talents with how, for me, it seems like they're taking things from Diablo, from Diablo 2 and Diablo 3 to add to the WoW Paladin. Like, I don't remember Cavalier ever being a thing before they added the Crusader in Diablo 3, and Blessed Hammers, which is for protection, grantedly, was always the hammer thing in Diablo 2. So maybe they can, I don't know, either take something like that, whatever those classes had, to replace some of the things that are dead. But I don't know, what are you guys' take on this?
If you play Diablo.
If you play Diablo.
I never played a Diablo game, so
yeah, me neither, so I don't know. I mean, I'll take any cool stuff they can give us, right? Because either it's really OP and then you're just super strong with it, either it's really fun and you just have a good time playing with it because it's like useful or does some cool thing. Even if it doesn't do like a million damage, if I can like blink out of stuff randomly, it would still be cool to have something new. I don't know.
I think Blink is cool for Ret Paladin.
I mean, there was this ability in Legion Alpha. There was this teleport ability, like similar to Tyrael's sword thing.
Oh, really?
You would throw your sword.
Yeah, it was like a
somewhere.
targeted thing.
Yeah.
You like teleport to it.
Yeah, and they scrapped it for some reason. I don't know if people got a chance to test it or play with it, but that sounded pretty cool at the time, you know, in terms of like mobility. Because I always felt like when I asked you guys about the mobility thing, one of the quote unquote problems I would say is like I always felt on some fights, and sometimes in Mythic Plus 2, I just want to get there faster, you know, and start hitting shit.
Yeah.
It feels so slow to get. If for some reason, if you use your pony, that's it, baby boy. Just walk, walk towards your target, and you know, and other, because you know, warriors have charged and stuff. You know, we can go, you know, the mobility from other specs or whatever, which is just keep it on the plate. Whereas I guess DKs have a lot more benefits from ranged abilities, right, than Reds do. So it's kind of like this downfall of like that ability, like throwing a sword and teleporting.
That would be so cool.
That's something like that would fix some of this. Okay, I really need to move fast. I did a mechanic, I did artificer or whatever. I want to get back into it. Well, you know.
Yeah, you're kind of stuck. Especially, you feel it more in M+, because between moving pack to pack, like if your tank isn't slowly edging the pack towards the next room or next pack or whatever, then you're just gonna be like, he's a DH, he's jumping, you're just left in the water. You just can't do anything. Man's 50 meters ahead of you, and you're just slowly waddling over.
That's the thing.
In M+, it's rough. In Keys, in Raid, I think it's fine for most times. Sometimes it's really bad though, which is a shame and could definitely be improved upon.
That's one of the reasons I was hoping like Nightfare and Vanity would be good for Ret, is like actually having like an extra mobility cooldown from the Covenants would have been really cool.
I mean, we can talk a lot about the borrow part thing. I just don't feel solutions are here to stay with borrow power, because if people get used to this playstyle, that's the thing. You can make an argument for Door of Shadows, right? That would basically be the mechanic we just talked about, like the sword you teleport to. Yeah, it's different, but it serves the same purpose. Well, guess what? Don't get too used to that shit, because you might not have it, right? It's a themed ability for a specific faction in the game. Has nothing to do with the Paladin class. You get used to the playstyle, and in the next expansion, the void and the light struggle for supremacy or whatever.
Spoilers.
I didn't know that.
Well, that's the problem, because it fixes a problem and then it goes away and the problem is still there.
Yeah, it's a different topic of discussion.
Next time it happens.
Things that are specific for Paladins should be implemented and here to stay. And so far, you guys touched on a lot of things. Like, I don't know if you made it clear up until this point, but what do you guys feel are like? I don't know if there are any core issues of Ret Paladins at the moment.
Maybe compared to the other melees, or
compared
to the encounter design.
Because I know we can talk about buffs, but I don't know in terms of like mechanics or damage profile or whatever. Do you have any stance on this?
I think the main area that Ret is like lagging a little bit behind is just sustained single target damage for the raid. Like, its burst is really, really good and its AoE is really, really good. It's just once you get to sustained damage, then Ret just falls behind a lot of other specs. Like, it's not awful. It's not like, bottom 10% of the specs or whatever, but it's like definitely a bit below middle of the pack. And that does hurt it, like when you bring it to, some raid bosses that are just single target. Other than that, it really is just like the whole class buff thing. Like, it's just really hard to find a spot for Rets. I mean, like I've seen a thing, the Ian interview the other day, where he was talking about trying to make it so that you can bring half your raid as melee and half your raid as ranged. That'd be a huge help to Ret's viability and making them better for raid. Just having 3 more potential spots that you can actually bring a Ret for is just insane, because half the existing spots are all raid buffs or AMZs.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. That like we just have the burst, and like as fights get longer and longer, if you lost on pole and then you just use everything on bull, and then after that you slowly fall to the bottom, or not the bottom, but like you slowly fall down. That obviously feels kind of rough. Beyond that, I would also say like the fact that our only real defensive is bubble, which is really strong, don't get me wrong, but like Shield of Vengeance is a solid absorb, but when there's a lot of damage going out over a longer period of time, your Shield of Vengeance will just get popped, and then you just have nothing for the other like 10 seconds of like the dot or of the boss slamming something or whatever. So I feel like if it got changed into like an actual defensive as well, because a lot of the times Shield of Vengeance, you use it you try to force break it just to use it for damage. So obviously, if you're progging a boss, you probably won't use it like that. You'll just save it for something that actually hurts and not twice.
Cheese a bit. We're times of cheese, so it's fine.
Yeah, but exactly. But on cheese, it's kind of on farm or whatever. I'm
pretty sure they count it as part of like Ret's damage profile as well. Like when they consider, Ret's damage, they're like, Shield of Vengeance has 3% of their damage. Like they count that as part of, Ret's DPS. And it's really toxic to have that as like a thing you're expected to use for damage, but it's also a defensive.
Yeah, because then, you use it for damage, you have nothing for defensive, and you just die. Or you save it for defensive, and then you do, as you said, like 3%, a bit less damage, a couple percent here and there. It really adds up, especially if it's a fight where, like, you can't have 100% uptime, for example. If you can't have 100% uptime, and you have to save a damage ability for defensive, that stuff all adds up, and then you just end up, like, perception-wise, doing really bad, but you're actually doing fine. You're doing what you're supposed to do, but you're just missing out a bunch of damage for free, kind of.
True.
Kind of sucks.
True. Let me ask you guys, is Ret Paladin a complicated and in-depth spec to play? Or is Ret Paladin a 4-button smash class at the spec at this point? Was it ever?
It's definitely not a 4-button spec. It's got a lot of buttons now, with like all the 1-minute stuff, Execution Sentence, Seraphim, Final Reckoning, Divine Toll, Wake of Ashes, all these abilities that you use like in combination. There's a lot of buttons, but it's not really at least that section of the rotation is not really complicated. You kind of just press the same buttons in the same order every time. So a lot of buttons, yes. Complicated, not really.
Yeah, you have your sequence, your 1 minute, and you just slam that in order. And if you do it properly the first time, every other time is going to be properly made as well, because they're just going to come up in the proper order. So that bit is it might look a bit like scary to someone who's new to the class, because suddenly like you pick all your talents and suddenly there's like 4 extra spells and you're like, holy, like how am I going to deal with all this? But once you get used to it, it's super fine, it's super easy. And then like the actual rotation buttons, yeah, you've got like 5 or 6, and it's kind of just, it's just a simple class which you need like a lot of buttons free for, I guess, because beyond that you also have all your utility, which is like, you probably have more utility buttons than other melee DPS or other classes that you'll use in raid. So sometimes, so you probably need a lot of buttons, but they're all like pretty simple and you know exactly what does. So you don't have to, you don't need to have like a second monitor with like a notepad of like all your proper rotation and how to do everything. You just kind of plod along and do what you have to do.
Do you guys feel, because there was a long time of a stigma for Ret Paladins, like, was it ever a face rolling spec in your eyes? Did you guys ever, like, since you played, did you ever feel like the spec was at some point this way?
Yeah, Wrath was definitely face rolling.
I love
like,
it.
Not gonna beat around the bush. Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Let me just ask you, Bolas, do you remember the cast sequence macro? Did you ever use that? Because I know I did.
No, I just like, it was just such a simple like priority. I just remembered, oh, you press this ability, this ability. I don't remember what the abilities are now, but like back in the day, it was I don't know. It didn't seem, compared to the depth that rotations have now, that was definitely very face rolly. Since then, I don't think it's been too bad though. I think it's had, especially during cooldowns like Crusade and stuff like that. If you messed up your Crusade opener, you're just going to do so much less DPS than anyone else. I think that's like, especially more recently, those kind of abilities are some things that people miss when they sort of think of Ret as easy.
Yeah, because Ret had no holy power, right? So you just smashed whatever was more important, and that's it.
You just smashed everything on cooldown.
Like, if I remember, like I heard like Divine Storm had just like a 10-second cooldown and did like a boatload of damage, and that's it. So you just ran up to someone and hit it, and then that's it.
Yeah, there was this cast sequence macro which had Judgment, Crusader Strike, Exorcism, and Divine Storm. I don't know if and I think Holy Rat was in there too. So it's like 4 abilities in a cast sequence macro, and you would just press that non-stop, one button, and you just dominate. It was just ridiculous. I think that's where the stigma was coming from, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then you don't really recover from that.
Well, it took it took a long time.
How many expansions?
No, but seriously now, just from that and moving into Cataclysm, you already had a bunch more stuff to like watch over, because you had then Inquisition was introduced, Zealotry was introduced. You had, as I talked about, a lot of the utility stuff, plus the Holy Power mechanic was introduced. You had the Guardian of the Ancient Kings. There was a lot more depth placed into the spec in Cata. But people still had that thing was like, oh man, I remember this, like, oh, go play a real class, you noob, and fuck off. I know how hard it is.
That pent-up frustration.
Yeah.
It would be the same with Demon Hunter today, right? Because when it got added in Legion, they had like 3 buttons, or for rotation, it's like I-Beam, your Builder, your Spender, and your Blade Dance. 4 buttons total that do like everything, kind of. I feel like even if they added like 3 abilities to the rotation of Demon Hunter next expansion, people would still consider it like the easy class for like for noobs or whatever. So I think it's stuff that you can't really change like instantly, and especially right now when you have Ret like one-shotting you with 2 buttons, it looks like, because you get hit by Final Reckoning and then you get hit by Final Verdict and you're dead. And so you think like, oh, Ret is just really easy. You press wings and then you're just dead. So I guess like the way people play against it and see it next to them in raid as well matters, because Final Verdict is 40% of your damage or something like that. So in raid, so people just they look at like details breakdown and they go, oh yeah, you pressed 4 buttons and you won.
Yeah, like execution sentence is like 10% of your damage as well, and that's like a 1-minute cooldown. You barely ever press it. It's like well, you got to do a whole bunch of other stuff to make sure that ability actually hits for damage.
Yeah, exactly. Did you guys have any chance to look at 9.1 and more specific, like the legendaries and stuff? Did you guys possibly think things can? What do you guys think? I don't know, Bolas. Did you write on Wowhead? On this?
I did some write-ups for them.
Okay. Do you have any more updates or insight you can just share a little bit? I mean, both of you guys. Any ideas on the legendaries coming up, and if it's, I don't know, maybe worth taken into consideration?
Now that they've clarified that the Venthyr one actually cancels Ashen Hollow when you walk out of it to give the cooldown reduction, that one seems just really bad. It's basically just a 50% duration buff. When like you compare that to Mad Paragon for Venthyr, I can't ever imagine that that's going to be good comparatively. I think that legendary is just not going to be good unless they redesign it for Ret. For the other ones, I haven't looked too in depth into the Night Fae one, but I don't think it's going to be super strong either. It basically, like for the middle 10 seconds of each buff, it doubles the strength of that buff. Maybe there's some situations it could be good on specific classes, like giving them extra summer, but I don't really think so. The Carrion one seems a lot better now, but it's also really bugged on the PTR. It's doing like, it's casting Divine Toll instead of a Judgment, but only like one Divine Toll, but it's like resetting its cooldown every time it procs, so you get like a 90-second cooldown instead. It's really bugged. I don't know. It's gonna, yeah, it's super weird. Like it will go to like 55 seconds and back up to 60, down to 55, back up to 60. But it will whenever they fix that one, we'll probably get a better idea of whether that one's good.
I was gonna ask about it.
Pretty rough to like test everything as well, because they just got on PTR like yesterday or the day before.
Yeah.
PTR. So it's a bit rough to test, but so far it looks kind of underwhelming. Like, as you said, like the Night Fae one I was kind of interested about, because I thought maybe you'd get to see it in like some weird MDI things where they like hard stack every buff on someone and they just go extremely hard. And I thought maybe you'd see Night Fae Pally and MDI as like a random thing to see, right? But apart from that, the Kirin one looks, as you said, the most interesting, but right now it's just too hard to test, or like too hard to know exactly what they want to do with it. Like, is it meant to proc combat meditation and like what's it called? The
Ring Clarity.
Ring and Clarity. Is it meant to do that? Is it not meant to? Is it doing it when it's not meant to? Like, there's like a few too many things to wonder about. And obviously there's the Necrolord one, which we have so many Necrolord Paladins. To test it for us and to give us their ideas.
I'm surprised how many people like Necrolord Paladin and really want it to be good for like how bad it is. It's insane to me.
I mean, I think it would be kind of cool, but
it'd be interesting. I'm not convinced it's going to be good.
I thought it'd be cool first time we saw it in like beta and stuff, because I thought that way you'd have like, you'd cast your 10+ Relic, you'd get a Divine Storm out of it. I thought that'd be really good for like for keys and stuff, to keep prio damage while cleaving in like big packs and stuff. In the end, just Divine Toll just reigns supreme, because you get so much mastery and you drip Final Reckoning and you just win. But until then, I don't know. Until we get to see the legendaries properly, we can't really know. And they have to be good, and they also have to be better than what we have, right? So it has to be better than Final Verdict, has to be better than Magister's Judgment. Like, that's kind of a big ask for just small abilities or just one item that are.
I think that's the biggest issue for sure. Yeah. Just like Red Legendaries are already so good. Like Final Verdict is single target, Tempest, Lightbringer, and AoE. You have to be pretty good legendaries in order to make them better than those.
Yeah, it's a strong competition with the current existing legendaries, and I feel they did a pretty good job overall for Ret Paladin and Shadowlands. Looking at the legendaries and even the talents, I felt like the talents, except a few fuck ups, the talents on Ret Paladin usually were traditionally like more balanced in a way, like most of the rows, more or less, and. Even like with the maybe you can have an argument in terms of the covenants, because like obviously you would want to go Kyrian for mythic +1s or whatever, and even in single target, it's just so much value because of the mastery and the divine and ringing clarity with Divine Toll, hitting the same target. Overall, I think it's looking pretty good. Does it look better than BFA in your opinion? Because I know Legion is the staple, but how do you guys would see it as compared to like coming out of BFA and into Shadowlands?
I'm not a huge fan of the 1 minute stuff personally. I know a lot of people really like it. I don't really like it that much. I think it's better than, I don't like Inquisition that much. That wasn't really a fun thing to play with. I didn't really like Vision of Perfection either. So like having to play that with Crusade, like those weren't really fun things for me for Ret. So compared to those, it's probably a slight improvement. I think like it's cool being able to do like massive burst AoE like with Final Reckoning. I'm just not a big fan of like, just using all your abilities in the same sequence every minute and then just AFKing for the next minute and then use all your abilities in the same exact sequence.
Yeah.
That's not like that interesting gameplay to me. But like compared to like just random procs of wings, like it's probably better than that.
Yeah, I think the random procs is really the rough part about Vision, because I think most people would agree that like having 90 seconds on wings is like better, right? It's just better. You just have more wings. Like that's just perfect. And then having, obviously you could stack like triple Light's Decree, triple Avenger's Might, and just go extremely hard like with your wings. Now it feels really like your wings are tiny and your minute builds like abilities are what does the damage kind of.
Yep.
So you have your Execution Sentence, your Final Reckoning, your Toll, and that's like where all your damage really lies. It feels like anyways, because I've done it a couple times in keys or something where like you use your minutes on a pack and then they're not quite up, but your wings are up randomly because I made a mistake. And then you press wings and you just do no damage because everything is your minutes. And so I personally really like having the big burst every 2 minutes. That's why I really liked Holy Avenger and like Guardian of Ancient Kings, which was like 5 and 1.5 minutes, but still like having the spec be wing centric, I think is, to me personally, more fun. But I guess why a lot of people would rather have it every minute, because at least for like dungeons and like some fights like Sludge Fist, it's just super nice to have it on a minute when you need it. It's just really cool with it versus just having to wait like an extra minute for all your damage to come in. I don't know. I think I preferred BFA a little bit with the conduits and the essences, the way it lined up at the end. But that was like right at the end when you had like full base gear. Right now it's a bit, we can't really compare the end of an expansion with the beginning of another one, because like all the scaling and stuff.
That's
like
true.
For all we know, essences might come back, right? In a different manner. I don't want to curse it. But like in a manner which like you get a lot more power, right? You could get like a random, anima power that like every 2 minutes you just get like, I don't know, 50% mastery. When you press wings with that, you just go to the moon, right? Like you can't compare the beginning and the end of two different things, I think, but.
Yeah, if you want to compare beginning to beginning, like this to Oldia, this is much better. It's a lot better. It's
True.
Night and day. Yeah,
10 times better. Yeah.
Okay, so keeping it into this mindset, we're getting closer to the end of it. I don't know if you guys remember, if let's say you were miraculously, hired by Blizzard, be in charge of the Ret Paladin spec or whatever. What ability or abilities would you either invent or introduce or bring back from the past to make Ret Paladin work better?
I really like Crusade in Legion. Having 2 minutes, I think it was, you went up to like 40, I think it was 40 or 60% haste and damage, at least 45. I think it was 3% per stack. So you had 45% more damage and haste. I mean, that was so fun to play. You went so fast. And at the end of BFA, when Crusade like became good again, because there was like peaks and troughs, so Inquisition was better, then Crusade was better, then so it was those two like fighting for the top spot, and in the end Crusade ended up being like the best. And I don't know, I really like the opener when you ramp up, you do all your all your big buttons, and then you have 25 seconds or 20 seconds of just pure damage. And if you move, it's just really sad because you lose all your damage. But if you don't move and you press wings correctly or like at the right time, you just go really, really hard. For actual design and like maybe viability, I guess, Aura Mastery is kind of like the thing that you would just want, because it would make you so good to have 20% flat damage reduction. It's not, and people can move out of it and it's fine. It's not like AMZ. It's not obviously magic only. Like that would be just insane to have to make the class. I'm worried it would make it too good, which is the issue. Then they would nerf something else.
It's okay.
But,
We can deserve our spot.
That's how it goes, right? Stuff gets buffed, stuff gets nerfed. But yeah, I think those two things, making Crusade like the premier pick, but then you would lose all the minute stuff, which a lot of people really like as well. So it's not easy to design and to fix something, kind of, to add something to make everyone happy, basically.
We'll leave them to worry about that. We just come up with the idea.
Oh, okay, yeah. Then definitely those two things then.
Right, what about you, Bolas?
For me personally, it's less of a design thing, but just, I personally just want an auto bubble back cheat death. It's so nice. Like I mostly, I raid a lot on Rogue now, and having cheat death in that class is just like,
It's
Oh,
good,
it's
right?
so good. You just ignore mechanics. You're like, oh, I can just stand in this thing. Not a big deal. If I proc it, it's fine. If I don't proc it, great. I can proc it later. Just having auto bubble back to just like not have to worry, be able to play really greedy. And if you get punished for playing greedy, it's not really that punished. You could have just bubbled that mechanic anyway. Like it's just having that kind of ability was really fun. And I really would like that back for Ret. And other than that, just like the mobility stuff we talked about earlier, like give us some mobility options back that aren't just Cavalier. Like those two things are what I'd really want for the spec. That would make me enjoy it more.
I mean, everybody has their their view on the spec and what they want. I would personally be more or less on the same boat as Frenchie and Bolas, and I would, go up to Ian and say, hey boss, remember that thing we had in Legion Alpha? That thwart thingy, that thwart teleport.
Yeah, that would be cool as well. Yeah.
Can you let's put that in?
That would be pretty cool. It would be like the leap.
I mean,
but it's so cool.
At the time, WoW had data mine the animation for it, and it so much resembled the Tyrael's throw sword. It's basically, a glowy, sword form, but made out of light. Then you just throw it there and you teleport it. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
What
Love
about
having
you,
extra
Fred?
tools.
Would you want
dress.
something for
Yeah.
the Paladin?
Well, I was actually talking to the guys. I'm not sure if we're gonna have this on the final edit, but personally, I like managing things. I like being very invested in the rotation, feeling like, oh, if I just practice this one other thing more than everybody else, I'll just do way more damage.
Give this man Inquisition.
Nah. The Inquisition. Was that Inquisition ever that difficult to
No, man, it's just...
No, you just press it.
You want
You
some...
just
press
press the button and you win.
Because
But-
their explanation was, we need to give Ret something to manage. Oh,
See,
great.
when you were talking with Frenchie about what kind of the Paladin should be, I feel like Retribution Paladin is more like what Frenchie said. I actually agree with him. It should be an Avenger. It's Retribution. You judge and you dispatch Retribution, right? So I feel like something that could enact that kind of class fantasy would be nice. Like what you said, that the old Guardian of Ancient Kings that's now currently just for produce to give you.
But they work differently than Prana. Guardian of Kings
Yeah, I
was
know,
super
but-
cool because it did damage, so it followed your target. It did damage to it. Not much, but it did damage. But it had this stackable thing of strength.
I was always attracted to the fantasy of the blood type angel, the Seraphim, right? Seraphim is just a buff cooldown, but if when you pop Guardian of Ancient Kings, you get like those wings, you turn into the Valkyr, right? Maybe that can be something as a DPS cooldown that can be added for Ret, where you can turn like you can sacrifice maybe.
But here's the thing: Guardian of Ancient Kings for Red spawned a Guardian of Ancient Kings.
Yeah.
So it was another thing, right? For Prot now it transforms into a Guardian of Ancient Kings, right? It makes him, the.
I liked back in TBC when they added God damn it, Paladins to Blood Elves. Didn't Blood Elves have Seal of Blood or something like that?
Oh, seals.
Yeah,
Wow.
well, I was talking with the guys that seals would be cool, but I can see that might be an antiquated.
Well, listen,
mechanic.
I would be happy if they would have brought back seals rather than auras. I think that would be...
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I always liked
Probably true.
warrior stance dancing. I don't know how they can implement it without being a chore, but if it's something, it always felt like whenever I picked up Paladin for the first time, it's like, oh, okay, hunters get pets, warriors get stances, paladins get seals, right? It always felt like, oh, okay, this is kind of like the thing that only paladins do. Obviously, you have like bubbles and all of that, but seals for me is like, oh, I empower myself with a specific version of the light, and that changes the aspect. That reminds me of how Survival Hunter now has wildfire bombs, how Monk kind of rotates through different kinds of rotation, the way you combine abilities, you get like Whirling Dragon Punch, right? That kind of management of buffs or things that can give you a different output, that's really interesting to me.
Seals would actually make up, I would say, would have the potential to make up for the utility things. For example, Seal of Wisdom, I think it was back in the day, that would refund mana to healers. So that I would see that being pretty useful at some point. I don't remember all the seals.
So you have Seal of Light, which is Judgment of Light now. We still have it on Holy.
So.
Oh yeah, I feel like we could do a lot with that kind of stuff, because it's not like as broken as like a class buff or something. Comparatively, it's just a bit of mana. But even if it's like, I don't know. I mean, I think Wisdom, Blessing of Wisdom, we had in last two expansions, was 10% mana to a healer over the course of a fight or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Even if it's that much, that's a decent amount, right? If it went to all healers and you get 10% mana to every single healer in the raid, that would be, I think that would be
kind
pretty
of
strong.
like a mana tide totem.
Yeah, that would be, and the problem is that might become quite mandatory as well. And literally only red could bring that, right? It's not even like the other specs of the same class could bring it. So it's, I don't know, it would be cool, but it might be really, really strong. And then you end up with the same problem saying earlier about like, okay, now instead of like a DH, a warrior, a monk, a mage, a priest, you also need a paladin to fit in with the warlocks and the DKs. Like, then you just end up with such a, like, half your raid is like mandatory things you can't switch out. And then there's another issue that rises for other like slightly off meta specs and classes, which...
So what you're saying, we won't need rogues anymore then?
I mean, maybe, but like if you push too many things out, or if you force too many things in, like it gets messy because other people don't get to play the game, and that's not the point.
I mean, there's some specs though that have some kind of like raid buff, like Enhancement Shaman has Wind Fury Totem, but they don't get bought because of that anyway. Like I think you can design utility that's useful for a raid, but that also you can live without. I think like that really was a thing, like Ret providing wisdom or like, Judgment of Wisdom or like whatever, all the kind of stuff that provided some extra mana to your healers and, other players that actually care about mana. Like having that kind of ability was something that Ret's had for a very long time in different kind of forms. Yeah. And it's very weird that they've given back a lot of like the old utility and they took away that and they haven't given Ret anything that does anything like that anymore. It's like it's a thing that it feels like Ret should have a niche that, gives some mana to your healers again, but it just doesn't now.
The only thing I remember about seals is like there was one in MUP that like you would hit the target like 5 times and you would apply a dot to them. And then if you really wanted to min-max, you would swap to another seal because that one did like on-hit damage. And then you would swap back to make sure the dot didn't fall off. Like that's the only thing of stance dancing I remember, which was kind of cool. But I feel like right now, because we have a lot of globals and stuff, it would be maybe finicky. Yeah, I don't know. So it's like, I feel like the supporty seals would be probably more interesting at least, because sometimes you could maybe have a bit more, mana, sometimes a bit more like defensive. So that'd probably be better than having to, as a player, like stance dance a bunch while also doing like all your rotation. Because, okay, it's simple, but there's still a lot of buttons to press for red, I think. So there's like a middle ground you can have with utility and damage, which can be found, I think. But it's you have to find it, which is the hard part, obviously.
Yeah, you were referring to Seal of Truth. That was the one that would stack. Then you would switch it, and I remember those times. But it would be, as you said, French, it would be impossible to add stance dancing in today's GCD bullshit era of the game. It would be something like super gimmicky and make the spec feel even slower if it would turn out to be like the best option. But that being said, I think we've gone to some pretty cool ideas, and we touched on multiple topics that personally I wanted to touch on. Obviously, this is not the last episode we're gonna have Ret talks here. We're definitely going to have some more after 9.1 goes live, and we get to see a lot more on, especially the legendaries, what we'll do, how the raid feels and how nice or not nice it is for melees or slower melees, I might add. Thank you so much, Mr. Frenchie and Mr. Bolas.
Thank you very much
for joining and sharing your thoughts and everything. I don't know if you guys have Twitters or Twitches or anything. If you have those, we'll make sure to have them in the description. If not, everybody go into the Hammer of Red Discord and chat it out with the boys. You want to learn things about Red, you want to get more advanced shit about Red, that's the place to be. Super recommend.
You want to shit post a little bit with the key boys? You can do that. There's so much going on in there.
Sure thing. And thank you everybody for watching up until this point. You can catch all new episodes on different specs every Monday on the the YouTube channel or on Spotify, Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, all around the place. You just have to look for it. Don't be lazy. That's it. Have a great week ahead, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Still I play WoW. Still I play WoW.